Welcome everyone to the Every Student Succeeds Act information session related to comprehensive support and improvement for LEAs and their school teams. My name is Dr. Tammy Gable, and we are really glad that you're able to join us. And we are really appreciative of you being able to bring your school teams. JJ, I just saw you there. Nice to see you again and your team. And hi, Kelly. I see a few names that we recognize. So welcome to all of you, and to those of you who are new to some of our work, we're glad you're here. Just a reminder, we are recording today's session, and it will be available for your use after this session. We'll post it in the live binder so that you can share it with other school teams. So with that, we have a jam-packed agenda, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a reminder to please log into the live binder. The live binder link was shared with you via email in your confirmation, and it's also available to you in the chat, and will continue to be available to you as we work through the ESSA CSI process. And again, we're really appreciative of school teams being here. Just want to make sure we're recording. Hold on one second. Okay, yes, we are recording. Great. All right. My apologies. All right, so please use the chat today for any comments or questions as we go. And we will pause throughout today's session and check the chat from time to time. And any questions, comments, things you want to share, again, please post there. I don't know why it's not advancing for me. There we go. All right, so our team here today is myself and Wendy Foy is our division secretary, and she is the magic behind the scenes, and we're really appreciative of her support for this. Chanel Young-Smith, Aaron Dover, and Dr. Sunhee Aquino are all here to support you. So the contact information for you is here, and you can feel free to contact us about anything related to CSI or actually any other systems change in school leadership needs that you may have. Why I'm not advancing. Okay, so we also wanted to give thanks to our colleagues from the Accountability Support and Monitoring Division. The LCAP state and federal program team built a presentation for district leadership. And if you didn't get to participate as a district leader in that session, that information is also available to you in the live binder, including the recording. So if you are a district leader, those resources are specific to you. And also Jessica Conkle has been very helpful to us in this work. The outcomes for today, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Aquino.
Good afternoon. As we take a look at our session outcomes, our plan today is to share information as well as give you opportunities to ask questions so that as members of school and district leadership teams, you will gain understanding about ESSA-CSI within the California System of Support, deepen your understanding of the role of the school, LEA or district, and county office in support of school level responsibilities, receive information on best practices, including evidence-based interventions and cycles of continuous improvement, and be invited to join future regional networked improvement communities in support of school-level improvement efforts and plan implementation. But before we dive in, we wanted to begin by taking a moment to acknowledge the present. So let's begin by acknowledging that we have been through a lot and we're still going through a lot. We may be tired, we've experienced loss, and it's okay to grieve the year you were supposed to have and your normal life. So take a deep breath. We thank you for being here today for all of your hard work on behalf of our students and families. And we want you to know that we are here to support you. As part of our check in, we also wanted to get a sense of where everyone is in the ESSA-CSI process. So, in a moment, you'll see a Zoom poll asking what phase of ESSA-CSI planning is your school in. And as you can see, there's 5 choices. We just found out. We submitted our LEA prompt and need to work on school level planning. We submitted our LEA prompt and have a school level plan and are working on it. We are all set and ready to go. And there's an other category, just in case none of those fit. If you would like to specify why you chose other, please feel free to enter it in the chat. All right. It looks like more people have jumped in, so let's give folks a few more minutes to take a look at the poll, to put in their selection. So far, what we're seeing that most people have submitted the LA prompt and need to work on school level planning. Right. We have still a few more people who are jumping into our poll. So the 2 top choices we see, 2 top selections, we've submitted our prompt and need to work on school level planning, or we've submitted our prompt and have a school level plan and are working on it. We also have some audience members who've just found out, and audience members who are all set and ready to go. So we're going to give it 10 more seconds and then we'll close our poll. All right. Again, just to give you a quick view of our poll results. And I think we are ready to move into our next phase.
Thank you. So, ESSA-CSI fits within the California system of support, and it is rooted in what many of you may have heard of, and some of you may not have heard of, is the California Way. While some of you are experts in this work, many of you have not heard of this before, and so we're going to be talking to those of you for whom it is new. And but the California Way was really a reaction by the state of California to No Child Left Behind. And after the federal, after California really reacted to NCLB, they really came back to saying under ESSA, they really, and under the California model, they really want to have California be the driver of California education, and that they realized that the ESSA funding is only 7% of the state education budget. And so they really wanted to not, as they would say, they didn't want the tail wagging the dog. And so they really wanted it to be California driven. And so it took them probably 8 years to really refine and put all of the elements into place, which many of you are using now. But the big ideas that were behind all of that work came from an opportunity to grow from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, from compliance to capacity building, from siloed thinking to systems thinking and a single coherent system. And for more information on the California Way, those two links are available to you and will take you to resources that will explain the California Way in more depth. As a part of the California Way, we are aware that LCFF came out as part of that, and part of LCFF also called for a statewide system of support. And so this is an illustration from CDE illustrating the statewide system of support. And you'll notice that it looks very similar to an MTSS, or a tiered framework of support, or multi-tiered system of support. Just like we would apply tiered systems to students, the California system of support is applying the statewide system of support to districts and their schools. And so you'll see that in level a tier 1 support would be support for all LEAs in schools, and that is the bottom of the schoolhouse there in green. Tier 2 is differentiated assistance, and some of your districts are eligible for differentiated assistance support. And tier 3 is a more intensive level of support, and all of that is explained there. More detail about the California system of support is outlined here. To align for the ESSA CSI work is really designed, and the support we are offering is aligned with this tiered framework of support. Keeping in mind the whole system looks at students and family as the purpose of our work, and that school sites have the most direct influence on students and are the place where transformation occurs. And most of you here today are from schools, and we are so glad you're here, and we know how hard it is. Our goal for today is to make sure that all the support we offer today is applicable to you during this pandemic. So we change from not just a compliance piece, but to a supportive model so that we can support you in the difficult work that you're already doing, especially during the pandemic. And then the LEA or district is the point of intervention. And so in the past under NCLB and even the federal under ESSA, it calls out support for schools, but it leaves out the district. So in California, California is saying we go through the district. So if you look carefully at our materials, you'll see everything talks about the district as the point of intervention or the LEA. And then the county, region, or state, depending on our role, will be to support not only the California MTSS framework in this case, but also all of the work that we do across the California system of support. This is another example of how the California system of support works. And you'll see those tiers on the left, support for all, differentiated assistance, and intensive intervention. And you'll see that the LEA is at the center of all of the systems of support. The first layer of support comes from the county offices. And then the next layer are the geographic lead agencies, which is a consortium of county offices working together to provide support for you. And then there's different content and specific projects. And they're all co-led and co-led by different county offices across California. For example, we talk a lot about MTSS. That work is co-led by Butte County Office of Ed and Orange County Department of Ed, but it is part of a statewide initiative or statewide system. The characteristics of the California system of support are to reduce redundancy across state and federal programs. So you'll see that everything is aligned with ESSA CSI so that you have a single plan, not many plans, that guidance and will be integrated and resources will be shared across state and federal programs, and that LEAs will be supported to meet identified student needs through the LCAP process and of course this year through the LCP process. The key strategies to be used by county offices throughout California are MTSS, that's why you hear about it so much. Implementation science, which is how we implement things that are evidence-based and the degree to which we do things well. And then improvement sciences, our improvement science, which is looking at the things that we've implemented, how is it going and what can we do to make it better? And so improvement science is actually a step within the implementation science process. And all of it comes together in a continuous improvement cycle. And again, as part of the California System of Support, LACO has also organized itself and created a system of support for all of you as a county office. And the purpose of the LACO system of support is to help local education agencies and their schools meet the needs of each student they serve, with a focus on building local capacity to sustain improvement and effectively address disparities in opportunities and outcomes. And so this is the LACO approach in supporting all of you. And then our team, the Center for District Capacity Building, also has a role to play. And that again is to, again, build capacity for all of you. Again, I mentioned districts as the point of intervention. And so again, you'll see us talk about either the district or the LEA in the work that we talk about today as part of CSI. And so if you have any questions, you can go ahead and post them now. But if you don't, if you have questions that come up later, feel free to ask questions at any time and we will do a quick check. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move forward and hand this over. Oh, no, this is still me. Sorry. So let me go back. Hold on a second. So as I was talking about the role of the school, the LEA, and the county office in supporting school level responsibilities, and you remember I just talked about a coherent system where everybody's coming together versus and working in a coordinated way. We're going to go through that in just a second. As I mentioned, similar to MTSS for students, the California System of Support uses a tiered model to support LEAs and their schools. So the concepts are iterative in nature. And again, there's a idea behind it all is support for all. So what are we providing to all students, or in this case, all schools, through all districts that are eligible for support? And then there's some schools that may need additional support and a few schools that need more intensive support. But the support is additive or layered. And so under the green 100%, notice that is 100%. So all schools in LA County receive core support. And then some schools need additional support. And that is layered in addition to the support for all versus replacing the support for all, and then more intensive support. Within each tier, there can be an increase in intensity based on the needs. And so some districts and their schools may need more intensive support, and others may not need any support at all. So taking that concept at the school level, TSI, which we're going to define in just a moment, ATSI and CSI, the action plan is reflected in the school plan with district or LEA support. At the district level, the district is responsible for providing support to schools, and those CSI actions need to be reflected in the CSI prompt. And then at the county level or the region level, the county office is responsible for providing support via districts or LEAs in support of their schools. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Chanel.
Thank you, Tammy. So now we're going to get into a little bit of the ESSA, the federal level identification. So ESSA requires states to hold schools accountable for how students achieve. This means each state is responsible for having a plan in place to identify schools that need additional support. In other words, it's a way for states to know how students are faring. ESSA requires states to use other indicators of student achievement and school quality. These include student and educator engagement, school climate, access to any completion of advanced work, and post-secondary readiness. Other possibilities include other measures that can be replicated statewide. The categories of support, we're going to go from the bottom to the top. For ESSA school identification are general assistance, ATSI, additional targeted support and improvement, TSI, targeted support and improvement, and CSI, comprehensive support and improvement. For the purpose of this presentation, we will discuss the criteria for eligibility for CSI schools. California will use the California School Dashboard to determine school eligibility for CSI. School eligibility is based on the following two categories of schools: low graduation rate and overall low performance. For low graduation, high schools with graduation rate less than 67% average over 2 years based on the 2018 dashboard, or high schools with a graduation rate less than 68% average over 2 years, beginning with the 2019 dashboard adopted by the State Board of Education on September 11th, 2019. Overall low performance criteria is less than the lowest performing 5% of Title I schools. This can include the following: schools with all red indicators, schools with all red but one indicator of another color, schools with all red and orange indicators, schools with 5 or more indicators where the majority are red. All of this information can be found on the CDE website for ESSA school criteria, also located in our live binder. So what is it? The Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, requires state educational agencies to determine school eligibility for comprehensive support and improvement. Comprehensive support and improvement, CSI, is a level of identification required by states to receive federal Title I funding. Just like MTSS and the California System of Support, as Tammy discussed earlier, ESSA eligibility and support is built upon tiered or differentiated assistance framework. In California, the State Board of Education and the California Department of Education staff worked very hard to align the California State Title I plan to the California System of Support. Much of the mechanics required to participate are based upon federal requirements, but align with the state system. When we review ESSA CSI eligibility, it is important for us to break down the profile of eligible schools in LA County, but also the criteria for eligibility. As you can see on your screens, all schools are eligible for general assistance, and for the 2019 year count, 2,206 schools are eligible for general assistance only. We have 179 schools that are eligible for additional targeted support and improvement, or ATSI, and 136 schools are eligible for comprehensive support and improvement, or CSI. Comprehensive support and improvement, section 11D of ESSA requires the state to notify each LEA that services schools that meet the criteria for CSI. Upon receiving notification from the state and in partnership with the stakeholders, and for each school that meets the criteria, the LEA shall locally develop and implement a plan for the school to improve student outcomes and approve each plan. The plan must be informed by all state indicators, including student performance against state determined long-term goals, be based upon school level needs assessment, include evidence-based interventions, and identify resource inequities, which may include a review of LEA and school level budgets, and address those inequities through implementation and plan. To clarify application plans and reporting requirements, we wanted to ensure you had a quick snapshot of the information so there is a clarity of dates and submission. Number one, LEA application for funding was supposed to be submitted February 2020. The intent was intent to apply for funding, ensure insurances, narrative responses, and preliminary funding plan. The next piece was the LEA level CSI prompts, which was just due this past October 31st. This was to ensure that LEA addressed how they are supporting the schools in identifying evidence-based practices, resource inequities, plan implementation, monitoring, and effectiveness. Also, the last one was a school plan. So we want to ensure we have this in red so that you do not get confused. The CSI prompts are different from your school-based plan. The school plan is a school level, developed with school, site council, and needs assessment. The last piece is reporting requirements to the CDE for ESSA funding.
Can I pause there for a quick second as I have new information? I was just notified that the LCAP State and Federal Programs Office has received many plans. There are some that are being, they're contacting the districts to revise the plan, and they will let you know if you need to make any adjustments before moving forward. So that process right now is underway.
So that's absolutely perfect. So if you need more detailed information, we want to ensure that you guys are able to connect with our local LCAP state and federal programs unit. They also, as Tammy discussed earlier, has prepared a presentation this past October 14th with the recording. The recording is also shared, and the presentation is shared on this slide, and we'll have it in our live binder links for you to connect with as well. Another aspect to note is a CSI identification and funding timelines. You will note across the top on the table the district categories. The year data was collected and dashboard was released. The year school was identified, the year of the federal funding, and expenditure deadline dates. I would encourage you to take a moment to review. If you have a pen and paper handy to write the table and information down, or even better yet, if you have your phone, just take a quick snapshot of this so you have this for your records. I'll pause for a moment so you're able to do so.
And it's available in the live binder.
Thank you. And the next slide. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add this into the chat, and then we'll have Sunyi go ahead and look at it for you if there's any questions so we can respond. If not, we will move on.
No questions at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. So we're going to go into the school plan a little bit further. So it contains the school planning requirements for schools that receive Title I funding and operate school-wide programs. In California, previous iteration was called the School Plan for Student Achievement, or the Single Plan for Student Achievement, and it's now known as the School Plan for Student Achievement, or what we all refer to as the CSI. And then also for schools that are identified as low performing. So as Chanel mentioned, CSI, TSI, ATSI. So that's kind of a quick review of that. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to kind of clarify the roles in this process, because I know sometimes it's a little confusing. So, so at the school site level, the school site is responsible to create the school plan for student achievement with their stakeholders. The school will then submit the CSI to the district or the LEA. And they are the ones who develop, they actually approve the comprehensive support and improvement plan based on a school level needs assessment. And at the district and LEA level, they are doing that school level needs assessment with the school site and their stakeholders. The district LEA will approve the CSI and ensure alignment to the LCP, which includes the ESSA CSI prompts. So it's making sure that everything is in alignment. And at the state level, they will approve, monitor, and periodically review the comprehensive support and improvement plan. Next slide, please. So again, we can't stress this enough, is that stakeholder engagement is required for this process. And I know that that's difficult during this time, but the more that you can be creative in how you engage stakeholders, whether virtually through Zoom calls or different types of methods. But the main thing is that for each school identified by the state in partnership with stakeholders, including principals, school leaders, teachers, parents, and I would say students, they are to locally develop and implement the CSI plan for the school to improve. So again, this is a stakeholder process, and really figuring out how you can reach out to those people who you think will be essential in having a voice in the plan. Next slide. So again, you know, thinking about this time that we are in, this unprecedented time, is, really asking how is learning loss measured right now? How are we doing that? I know several districts have adopted ways to do so, but also what other data might help in this process? How can you collect qualitative data during this time? I know that many districts are putting out a lot of surveys. How can you conduct focus groups and also utilize data that is already taken in the LCP? So really kind of being comprehensive and gaining data. Also, how might LEAs support schools in this works? How might we learn from one another and how to approach this type of work? And what is the process? Making sure the process is clear that the LEA will use or the district will use in a school level needs assessment. Next slide. So again, at the bottom, just kind of emphasizing again, what additional data, what local data might you have? Definitely graduation dropout data, cohort data, student engagement data, which is required right now through SB 98. How can you put that data to use? And of course, as I mentioned before, learning loss data. Next slide. Okay, so it's kind of an overview of the elements. So it shall include a description of the strategies to meet the school needs. So just a clear description on that. And then how the strategies will first off provide opportunities for all students, including each student group, to meet the state standards. So those student groups that have the greatest needs. How will you strengthen the overall academic program, improve learning time, and support enriched and accelerated curriculum? And then finally, address the needs of all students in the school, particularly those, of course, at risk of not meeting state standards. And then how will this, that's all right, you can go on to the next one. So the other elements, part 2, the plan must of course be informed by all indicators, including performance against state determined long-term goals. So really looking at the dashboard, include evidence-based instruction. We're going to kind of get into or interventions. We'll get into that in a little bit and what evidence-based is in the law. And be based on a needs assessment. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But it looks like many of the districts, at least that are here, have already kind of started that process already. Identify, and then the last one is identifying resource inequities, which may include a review of the LEA and school level budgeting to be addressed in a plan. We'll talk a little bit more about resource inequities. Next slide. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the school level needs assessment. So what is a needs assessment? And basically it is a process or procedure that's used to identify and address factors between current outcomes and then the desired outcomes that you want. I know the LCAP team previously talked about in their presentation, talked a little bit more about the school level needs assessment and kind of what that looks like. But basically, kind of the how-to is just using a systemic process to determine basically the strengths and weaknesses of a school and or the LEA. And then on top of that, understanding the context and constraints of the school. A lot of times we come up with a lot of, solutionitis is what we call it, just, putting solutions down. We really want to understand the context of what is happening in our systems to get the results that we're getting. Performing a root cause analysis. So again, this is about really digging deep at the root of the symptoms. So not just looking strictly at the results. What are the roots? How are we obtaining these results, and what is at play here? So really kind of taking a deep dive and having some real I guess longer discussions around the root causes of the results. And of course, finally developing an improvement plan, being specific about outlining the changes considered most likely to bolster or build on strengths and remediate weaknesses. So really looking at just kind of taking a strength-based approach. What is it that is strong in your system and leveraging that to build upon those and remediate any weaknesses that are occurring in the system. Next slide, please. Okay, so resource inequities, what is that? That's again, the LCAP team went into greater details about that, but basically it is looking at inequities and how that district and site levels are spending their time and their resources. So when we talk about resources, we are talking about people, time, and money. And so how are those things allocated to the students with the greatest needs? Sometimes when we look closer at our budgets and we look closer at our plans and our systems, we see that maybe those things are not aligned. The whole idea of equity is not that everybody gets the same, that we put all our money towards the same goals to the same students, but we really want to align our people, time, and resources to those students who have the greatest challenges. So that might include a review of looking at what current interventions and supports do you have available currently, looking at your staffing. You know, one thing that we see is where are we placing our best teachers? Are we placing our best teachers with students that have the greatest challenges, or are they, you know, typically sometimes you see that they're doing all of the AP classes? So are we staffing to meet the needs of our students? Instructional materials and technology. What does that look like? How are we ensuring that our students that need it the most have access to those items? Access to advanced courses and other school activities. So do we have high expectations for all students? And are we identifying students to ensure that they are placed into higher level courses? So it's not just the same students. Are we kind of breaking down some of those barriers that some students have and trying to get into an AP class? So, you know, that's looking at prerequisites and those type of sort of gatekeeper items. And then of course, the funding priorities and the student current school plan. So really looking at what your priorities are and how you're matching funding to those priorities. Next slide. Okay, so here I'm gonna turn this over to Sungi, and she can talk about evidence-based interventions.
Thank you, Aaron. So as part of your school level analysis, you will most likely be looking closely at the interventions that you provide. You may be asking, what are evidence-based interventions? Are we providing evidence-based interventions? So evidence-based interventions are practices or programs that have evidence to show that they are effective at producing results and improving outcomes when implemented. In other words, evidence-based interventions have been proven to be effective in achieving specific desired outcomes, generally through formal studies and research. Next slide, please. Under ESSA, there are 4 tiers or levels of evidence, and you'll see those on the right side of your screen. Interventions that are categorized as Tier 1 provide strong evidence based on the strength of formal studies, with Tier 2 providing moderate evidence, Tier 3 providing promising evidence, and Tier 4, which is supported by research and still in the process of determining effectiveness. What is most important for schools and for LEAs is to ensure that as a CSI school, you choose interventions that fall under tiers 1, 2, or 3. All 3 tiers show evidence-based outcomes. So how can you find tier 1, 2, or 3 interventions, or how can you double check to see if the interventions you're using are evidence-based? We recommend that a good place to start is What Works Clearinghouse, which you'll see is linked on the slide. and they use rigorous standards to review evidence of effectiveness on a wide range of interventions and also summarizes the settings and populations in the studies. So you will definitely want to pay close attention to the settings and populations because the intervention may be effective, but the question is it effective for your community, for your population? If you're using a particular program, you can always ask the program provider to show you how they meet tier 1, 2, or 3 levels of evidence. And I just wanted you to know it definitely takes a number of rereads to understand the differences in the tiers. So we encourage you to take a look at the resources and video provided by the California Department of Education, which is also linked on the slide, and that explains the requirements for evidence-based interventions in ESSA. And that page also provides additional resources.
And also, just so you know, the What Works Clearinghouse is actually called out in the ESSA under Title I, Section 1003 of the federal funding.
Okay. Are there any questions at this time in the chat? I know we've kind of went through quite a few slides, but we just wanted to do a little check on questions. No, don't see anything.
I don't see anything, Aaron.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and moving right along. So one of the things we really wanted to get into is the whole idea of the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. And that's really the crux of what we want to share with you as far as how our team can work with schools and districts. But basically, I know many of you have heard of this process. And so what we have is just a little video that kind of highlights what that looks like. So we'll go ahead and play that for you and come back.
At implementing new ideas. Some might even argue too many new ideas. The good news about PDSAs is that you'll have the opportunity to evaluate changes that work and those that don't, allowing you to make good decisions of where to put time and resources. So the first thing you'll need is a change idea that you think might make things better for your school or community. Now it's time to test that change idea in small scale through a Plan, Do, Study, Act, or PDSA cycle. The cycle has 4 stages. The plan, where we determine what we hope to learn and make predictions. The do, where we execute the change idea and collect data. The study, where we examine the data. And the act, where we determine whether to adapt, adopt, or abandon the change idea. Let's take a look at the PDSA cycle in a little more depth. In the plan stage, we name what we want to learn from this test, and we also name our predictions about what we think will happen. The Carnegie Institute stresses the importance of articulating your predictions. By articulating predictions, you're making your theories, assumptions, and the hypotheses about the world and how it works explicit. And that's really critical because later in the study section, you're going to compare your results to those predictions, and that's what reveals your gaps and understandings, which in turn helps you refine your change idea. In order to do this, it's important to choose what data you'll collect and monitor to test your prediction. If your change idea is implementing a peace circle in the first 5 minutes of your class, you might monitor changes in student behavior following the peace circle over a course of a week. Or maybe you want to test starting staff meetings with a specific trust generator. You might decide to monitor and note evidence of any conversations between staff that continue beyond the meeting in the days to follow. Once you have determined the who, what, when, where of the test, you move on to the next phase, do. In the do stage, you implement what you have planned and collect your data. You also start to reflect upon any surprises, obstacles, or challenges that may have come up during the test. Once the test is over, you move on to the study stage, where you go back to your predictions and, with the results, compare how they line up. Questions such as, who did this work for? Who didn't it work for? What didn't work and why are asked. From here, we act based on what we just learned from the test. You decide if you're going to adapt, or abandon the change idea. This means that PDSA cycles don't end, but rather they're linked to and build upon each other as you incorporate what you have learned from the previous cycle. By utilizing this disciplined approach, you take small, incremental, proven steps to lead your community towards continuous improvement.
Okay, Tammy, if you can want to go to the next slide. Okay, so basically in a nutshell, what our hope is that these plans that are put in place are not just obviously something that sits on a shelf. We want to operationalize those plans, and we want to do it in an impactful way. And basically the PDSA cycle will allow you to revisit your plan in shorter cycles of time versus we created a plan and then we're going to wait until the end of the year to see if it worked. Well, that's not necessarily real effective. In fact, I watching football the other day. It's the coaches that are able to adjust, right? Whatever coach adjusts the most or most effectively during halftime, those are the ones. Those are the teams that generally win. So the idea is to kind of take that approach here to schools, and really, you guys have created a plan, but now how can you test a plan in more frequent cycles so that if things are not working or things need to be refined, you can do that and it's not too late. So at the bottom, it says try cycles within one school year. So we really want to kind of look at rapid cycles of testing your plan and refining and going through that process. Next slide.
We do have a question in the chat. And the question that was posed is, what are some effective ways to collect data?
That is an excellent question. Does anybody on the team want to take that, or I can speak to that because that's kind of actually a very broad question. There are a lot of effective and awesome ways to collect data, kind of depending on what your goal is and what your plan is, and that will inform what data you want to collect. But the more comprehensive data that you do collect, the more helpful. I don't know if anybody else on the team has anything to say about that.
Yes, I do. This is Tammy. So one thing I would start with is right now we're in a pandemic, and under SB 98, the idea is that we are engaging our students and we're monitoring their participation and their engagement on a regular basis. One effective way I've seen of districts leading the way on monitoring student progress is they're pulling reports at the district level to compare grades of students from this year at this time to last year. And then they're using that data to identify students who are struggling and then deploying teams of support out to support those students and their teachers. And so that's not taking the teachers to do that. It's a district level function so that the district can kind of monitor from afar where the needs are and then intervene quickly and early. The other thing would be to, during the pandemic, look at your attendance data. How are students doing? And I know that a lot of places had many students with D's and F's at the end of the first quarter. But would it be possible perhaps to monitor students on a weekly basis, to identify students who are not engaging on a weekly basis? That's what's required in SB 98, is that we're to follow up on students who are not engaging about 60% of the time. or more. And so you can identify early and frequently, often, instead of waiting to the end when it's too late to intervene with the students. Those are a couple of ways. And then there's other ways. We've seen simple polls and surveys, some check-in things. We're going to show you Jamboard in a few minutes. You can do some formative assessments on the fly by just asking simple questions of your students to see how they're doing and how they're feeling about things at school. Those are just a couple of examples. And of course, there's the other traditional ways as well.
Great, thank you. Go on to the next section. And Tammy, this is you, Tammy. You're going to go into a little bit of the funding. Good segue.
Always about the money. And we often get asked about how to use the funding, what are allowable expenditures. We know that schools are really challenged right now for resources to support meaningful programs. But what we want to remember is that there are requirements under receiving this money. You're getting a lot of money to support this. And we believe that you'll get this money for more than 1 year because they're not going to identify a new bunch of schools next year. So you have an opportunity right now to really improve your system overall. But there are some requirements. And those requirements are you have to develop a plan. Actually, the LEA has to develop the plan for the schools. And the school needs to incorporate that plan into their school plan. And then the school planning and the LEA support and assistance for each school, again, is incorporated into the planning process. So there are some requirements. And of course, as we mentioned before, the evidence-based elements have to be addressed. But I would think about right now during this pandemic, what resources do you need? What is your current student data saying? Are the students attending? Are they engaging? Do they have the equipment and resources and materials they need to have access? If not, how are you going to get it to them? Are there community liaisons or really cool staff? Many of you are from continuation schools, and we know that the students only respond to certain staff. I was an alt ed principal at one point in my life, and I know that there's only certain people that they engage with, and others they'll run from. And so, who is your coolest teacher that you or community liaison or social worker or whoever you've got that you can pay to reach out to these kids and go hunt them down and get them engaged in school? And so think about the students and what their needs are, what motivates them, and think about ways to get them back and engaged in school. So here are some of the details. So there's two sections. One is the role of the county office, and the other is the role of the LEA and the school. And so, of course, you have to complete the district has to complete the LCP and the summary CSI prompt. There's a plan development and implementation piece. Again, it's the ESSA CSI prompt and the school plan, and then LCP does play a role in it. And then the question is, let me go back 1 second. In this section, think about how to build capacity within your school. And this is really the LEA needs to think about, how do you build capacity within the schools? How do you support partnering with stakeholders? What does the needs assessment look like? How are you going to identify and develop those evidence-based interventions, strategies, and activities? And again, the funding has to be be spent on things that are evidence-based. And there may be some things that are really great, but they might not meet those rigorous categories of 1 through 3 under the guidelines for evidence-based. And then what data will you use to develop, implement, and monitor the improvement efforts? And then how will you identify and review resource inequities, as Chanel went over, including the budgeting piece. So all of that is things that you can use the funding for. So time, planning, resources. But again, think about those students. And again, this is not a normal year. So what in this current context, and the data's old. So the data that made you eligible now is at least a year or 18 months old. So that data may or may not be relevant, but it's a place to start. And then fast forward to now, what is the current pressing issue? Because some of those kids may have graduated, by now. They may not even be in the system. But what are the needs of your current students right now during this pandemic? And then the county office also has a role to play in providing support. As I mentioned before, they're in the process of reviewing and approving the ESSA CSI prompt, as well as the LCPs. And then the role is also to help build LEA capacity in support of their schools. So that's what we're doing this session. And we'll have additional sessions. And then we can also provide technical assistance and support to all of you related to CSI plan development and implementation. So we're here to help, basically. And we can help you with all of this other stuff, because that's a big lift, and it may be challenging. So we're also available to help you in your role as well. And again, as I mentioned, this is a pandemic. So how has the pandemic affected the needs of your students right now? And how might you use these resources to address learning loss, trauma, and engagement? But again, remember, it has to be evidence-based. Any additional questions? Nope, not yet. All right, so regional networked improvement communities. I can't remember who's doing this.
I think that's me, but I
Go
think
ahead.
any of us can do it.
Go ahead.
But anyways, so it kind of actually goes back to the PDSA cycle. And this is a little bit of a commercial as well. It's really what we want to offer school teams and our district teams along with their schools, is this whole idea of working together in a networked learning community. So we're going to we'll give some more information on that. But basically, it's teams working for a common, they're looking at a common theme or problem. They're creating collaborations among one another, sharing their knowledge of one another and sharing practices, because we realize that we can't, we don't have all the answers, right? So it's better to work in a sort of community who are all kind of striving towards the same thing in order to basically build upon your knowledge base, honor collective intelligence, and then also kind of share knowledge in order to improve. And so that's really kind of the idea, is not only having a PDSA cycle that individual teams are going through, but also sharing that with other teams and sharing your knowledge, asking questions, and just kind of getting out of, I guess, your virtual four walls and talking and networking with other teams. Next slide, please. And so this is our flyer here. We really want to invite you to sort of to do this along with us. And I know, Tammy, I think you're going to talk a little bit more about the flyer and the series outcomes for a future network learning or improvement community.
Right. So the big idea we've been talking about, the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. We introduced the Carnegie 90-day cycles of improvement, or we mentioned it briefly. But we want to offer all of you an opportunity to roll up your sleeves and to work together and to learn together around your own unique problems. So when we bring you together, we're going to facilitate some information about how to do a root cause analysis, for example, or how to develop a theory of action and to develop an action plan and support for the needs assessment piece. But we're gonna, so we may share that to everybody, but we're gonna let everyone work on their own problem for their own unique schools, and then share together, because many of you may have similar problems. Some of your challenges may be different. And so we'll give you a chance to share with each other things that are working. And some of you may have strengths that are in one area that may be a need in another district or school. And so having that time for cross-school, cross-organizational sharing, I think is really important. So we hope that you join us for this, but this is a service that we want to offer all of you. And we think it could be really meaningful and rich in the process. So we hope you sign up. And the first session will be in December, I believe.
Okay, so what we want to do is kind of put a little bit of this in practice right now, and just kind of show how sharing ideas and how effective that can be, even though you might be at different schools and districts. I think you'll find that many of us are struggling with the same challenges, and that many of us are working on some similar things. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take you through a little interactive portion of our presentation. We're going to take you on to the Jamboard. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that for you really quickly. Tammy, do you want to show the Jamboard?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me know if you can see it.
Yes,
Okay.
I see it on there. So our first question, so and then I think Sung-Yi, if you can put the link in the chat.
He did.
Okay, great. So what you're going to do is, I see that many people are already sort of logged into the Jamboard. And so the first question that we have for you that we want you to reflect on and share is, based on your data, what you kind of already know about your data, share one idea, one change idea your school had. So one change idea your school had. And what you're going to do is you're going to move your cursor over to the side, and you're going to pull up a virtual Post-it note. And as you can see, Tammy is demonstrating right there. And you are going to write in your answer on the sticky note, just like Tammy did right there. And we really want to hear from you. See an oopsie. One change idea that your team has already had. Chanel, I know, is there. She's going to kind of organize your answer and kind of into different categories as they come. So I'm going to give you about a minute to go ahead and fill out a sticky note and post it on the Jamboard. So we got one already. Hire more tutors to help students one-on-one on Zoom during school dismissal. Yes. Tutoring is a hot ticket item right now. Access to hot spots, absolutely. Let's see, we have a few more coming in. Move our MTSS interventions to more evidence-based practices. That's a great idea, to really kind of look at what you already have, and those things that we already have in place, are they evidence-based? And that is definitely something that you can do with your teams, and kind of take a look at that and analyze what you already have. So it's just a lot of great ideas coming through. Increasing targeted small group intervention during the school day. Absolutely finding time to do that. More technology, more Chromebooks, figuring out new ways to engage parents. Just a lot of great stuff. And as you what I want you to do as you're seeing these ideas come in, think about the PDSA cycle. Think about how you might test some of these ideas, and what kind of data you might use to see if some of these ideas are working or not working, and whether or not you need to refine what you're doing. And that's really the idea behind this. Lots of excellent answers, looking at your staffing. Providing opportunities for socio-emotional support. virtually. Virtual field trips. Awesome. So we're going to give you about 15 seconds. If you haven't already been able to post a Post-it note, we'll get that onto the board. And then what we'll do is we'll go on to the next question. So give you about 10 more seconds. Lots of excellent ideas here. We're going to capture all these. We'll make a PDF of this so that you guys can see all the answers that you guys kind of came up with in the live binder.
We also have, we did this session once before on October 29th. And if you want to
Yeah.
see another group said, we captured those resources there as well. And again, they're in the live binder for your review.
All right, lots of great ideas that are being thrown in here. It's just really wonderful to see. Okay, so I think what we can do is we'll go on to the next question. So in order to do that, you'll just go to the top and click the arrow. As you can see, Tammy's cursor is right there, and you're going to click on that, and that'll bring you to the next question. So let's go ahead and move that forward. So again, I kind of hinted to this already. How might a PDSA cycle improve student outcomes at your school? Thinking of the ideas that you shared, that you and your teams have shared, how might a PDSA cycle work? How might that help improve outcomes? How might you kind of take these ideas and put them into a PDSA plan, do, study, act cycle? So go ahead and post your answers. I'll give you a couple minutes. Okay, we got a few things coming in. Accountability. Yes. And that's one of the great things about the PDSA cycle. It does create a sort of collective accountability for whatever it is that that you planned, because you have to return to it, right? It's not something that you just have a plan, it sits on the shelf. You have to kind of return to that plan. Following student engagement as staff training is focused at improving student engagement. Creating specific timely focus, keyword there, specific, and then also timely. Continually looking at the most current data, right, in shorter cycles. Wonderful. Clarifying goals. It makes it easier to study them. Absolutely. I hear a lot about clarity. Collaboration. Making sure that all stakeholders know the components. Making sure that that is communicated across your system. Absolutely. Strategic approach. Keeps the plan alive. Continued conversation. Analyzing data can help improve your program by improving or finding new resources to improve student intervention outcomes. Absolutely. It really keeps everybody on their toes. It keeps the team focused. Building deeper relationships. Love that. Facilitated students take ownership of their own learning. Love it. A lot of great answers coming in. Give you about 15 more seconds if you haven't had an opportunity to post. And then we'll move on to the next question. Don't be afraid to abandon. Absolutely. If things aren't working, how can you maybe abandon what's happening and come up with something new that is more effective based on the data? And that's a key, is that waiting till the end of the year to decide whether or not you've reached your goal, that's just too late. So if you're going to abandon a practice, better to do that in a shorter cycle. Alignment, very good. All right, let's go ahead, and a lot of excellent ideas here. Let's go ahead and try the next question. So once again, you're just gonna click the arrow. Okay, see, so there's already some answers in here. So as a school team, what are your next steps? So as you leave this presentation, what are your next steps as a team? So what are some things that you're planning? And that's the power of a networked improvement community as well, that you get to share the steps you've taken with other teams and learn from one another. So we see some next steps already. We're going to create a PDSA. Great. Some people have to develop the plan, analyze the data from the needs assessment. So there's already been a needs assessment in place. Now they're going to analyze it together, data dive, making sure that the plan is thoroughly understood by all stakeholders. So really kind of making sure that the plan is understood and communicated to all stakeholders. Lots of great next steps. Study the data, clarify the plan for all, meet, read, analyze, communicate. Looks like Tammy's putting something in there. Yeah, so Tammy, so is the team familiar with the LEA and district's answers to the CSI prompts that's placed in the LCP? So that's a good next step. Clarifying what that looks like, asking about the answers to the prompts. Give you about 30 more seconds. Okay. All right, we want to make sure we get our next final question in there. So you can go ahead and continue writing down or posting what your next steps are, but we wanted to make sure that we give you some time to answer this next question, because that helps us figure out how we can help you. So how can LACO support your team? What are some ways that we can support you in the work, support you in the PDSA cycle? If you are, hopefully you're planning on engaging in the network improvement community. How can we help this be impactful for your team? What are some things that you need from us? Good to hear that we're already helping. That's great. Do I see sharing, share data, gathering ideas and resources, training on evidence-based practices, training on analyzing data, the use of analyzing data, resources and training our way. Where is this working already? Highlight what's working in other LEAs, yes. And that's what we hope to do with the networked improvement communities. Everyone love to see a menu of evidence-based intervention from the Center of District Capacity Building. Ways to support students during distance learning and hybrid. So we are definitely going to take a look at them. Some of these things we have provided in the past, especially we've done a lot of work with supporting students and during distance learning. We've shared some hybrid learning concepts and models. We've kind of been talking about that throughout our Thursdays at 3s. If you haven't been with us for those, we're just sort of finishing up a series on the student success team during virtual learning. So we've kind of, and then also looking at MTSS and how we can anchor these things in tiered supports, and looking at our MTSS system during distance learning.
You know,
We have training. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I think another resource that might be helpful is the student attendance and engagement series that we offered in August. I'll add that as a binder, as a link in the live binder for you. It is all recorded and gives you all the basics and the intent behind the COVID rules and tips and guidelines for working with families, with specific student groups, how to apply MTSS in this setting. Some of you were part of it. I know, I remember seeing all of you, but some of you may not have seen this before. So we'll make sure that that's available to you.
All right. So if you haven't been able to post, the Jamboard will be up. You have access to it. And we do want to hear from you. But that is the last of our questions for the Jamboard. And so we will go into our, we're going to wrap this up.
My bar, this little bar I keep dragging in front of you. Every time I get it out of the way, it pops back up there and I can't find it. Anyway, so there we go. You get to look at it. All right, so next steps. We are going to have the network improvement communities that we mentioned earlier. It will be the second Thursday of the month. We like to keep it simple so you don't have to remember things. It will be 90 minutes, so it'll be from 3 o'clock to 4:30. We think any longer than that on Zoom is pure torture. And so we want to keep it sort of short. We encourage you to bring district and school teams, and it's important that everybody attend consistently because otherwise they miss out on important conversations and will slow the team down if there's not a commitment to participate by the entire team for every session. We may also offer technical assistance and support that's customized to each team in between each session. So think about it like this. You might meet the second Thursday of the month, and then maybe in a week or so, you might check in with some of us, or one of you might check in with some of us, and we help you in the middle if you need it. And then you come back the next second Thursday of the month and so forth. And again, the big idea is to apply principles of continuous improvement using a networked improvement community model. And it's school and LEA driven, evidence-based. Here's the registration link. And the dates are down below. And so we hope that you are able to join us. With that, I'm going to turn this back to Sung-Hee. Yes, we'll put the registration link in the chat as well. Thank you. And there it is. Thank you, Wendy.
So to quickly revisit our session outcomes for today, we shared information and resources with the intent that at this moment you have gained understanding about ESSA CSI within the California System of Support, that you've deepened your understanding of the role of the school, LEA or district, and county office, that you've received information on best practices, including evidence-based interventions and cycles of continuous improvement, and that you've been invited to and learned about future regional networked improvement communities. So at this point, I do not see any additional questions in the chat. So we would love for you to provide some input. Just a final reminder that we're here to support you. We'd like your input so that we can customize our support to your needs. And if you can answer a couple of questions for us at the link on this slide, we'd appreciate it very much. This Google form can also be a way for you to request contact. So thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm going to turn it back to Tammy.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the entire team. They've all worked really hard on putting these materials together. And we're appreciative of you being here. If you could think about this survey as your exit ticket, if you were in a face-to-face PD, and you would be handing this to us on your way out the door, we would really appreciate it because your feedback and input really matters to us. It will help inform us for future sessions. And again, our goal is to make it about you and to make it relevant to you and your work. We know your work is really hard. And so anything we can do to help translate all the federal requirements and mandates into concrete actionable steps for you, doing some really incredibly difficult work in the field right now. We just want you to know we're here to support you in that. So thank you all very much for all you do on behalf of our kids and on behalf of some of the neediest kids in the state of California. So kudos to all of you. And hang in there, be safe, and keep doing the good work for kids. Thank you. And we'll just leave this here for just a second. Or Sung-Hee, can you post it in the chat again? And then if you haven't, make sure you check the live binder, and all of the resources are there.